test. Right. Ooh. One sec. All right.
I've
All
got
right,
a
we're
post.
live. We're live. We're live. We're live. We're live. Don't. I mean, you can talk about all the things because it's all going to be public in when you post it anyway. But welcome everybody. We're on our third live stream for Middle Earth March Madness. This is the most we've ever talked about any bracket as far as hours talking because there's the artwork demands your attention. If someone want to explain what March Madness is?
Yes, because I was watching it. Well, I was just watching both men's and women's tournament, the basketball tournament, as well as also watching the women's gymnastics regional finals that UCLA is competing in. So I've been doing the sports thing, and I'm watching Kings hockey game on my phone. So I'm a bit of a sports geek, but every college athletics program has a championship run, and basketball being a popular sport started to elevate, and they started doing these tournaments. First, you have to win in your division, or whatever conference you're in. Then you go to regionals, and then you go to finals, and that's how everything normally works. With basketball and how commercial it was getting, they really, really pumped it up. And about 15, 20 years ago, it was the thing to do in March was to watch college basketball. But so that's what it is. It's a tournament. I just watched a Cinderella team win a Sweet 16 round and is going on, or actually they're going on to the Sweet 16. Arkansas just beat St. John's, which was a number 10 to a number 4 seed.
Yeah, there are ESPN put a headline out on for their notification. There are only 18 perfect brackets left in their whole of all the millions of people that play it through ESPN's app. There's 18 people left that have a perfect bracket.
Because
we have a perfect bracket right here, though. Let me just say.
Our bracket is always perfect.
Perfect bracket.
We haven't eliminated anyone yet. That's why it's perfect still.
It's always perfect.
And you still have a chance. You have a day and a half left to vote.
But you know what's really fun this year? I have to say, I probably shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it. I'm always slightly skeptical about our Middle Earth March Madness. I always end up doing a lot of work, writing homepage posts and things. And I'm always like, what are we doing this for? Like, fun idea. But this one, looking at these different artworks, has really captured the imagination. And even like the other day, Donato Giancola, one of our featured artists, himself shared it on his Facebook feed, encouraging people to vote because he just thought it was so much fun that all these artists and that it was like an art gallery that you could wander through and look at different images and then you could vote. And he's like, hey, everyone, you should do this. This is so fun. So even the artists themselves that we've been able to be in touch with to let them know about this think this is a fun bracket this year. So yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Speaking of getting fan response as well.
I was going to say the last time we had a really fun one was the videos, the little video, iconic scenes. With
the
that
iconic scenes was fun.
The lighting of the beacon fires versus the charge of the Rohirrim. I mean,
that was a lot of work setting up, but Donato's not the only artist that's been engaged because Kirsten, I think we should reveal what's going to happen this week.
Yeah, on Tuesday, right? Special guest for Torn Tuesday.
It's going to be
the very person behind Josh there. His artwork is there. Jerry Vanderstelt is going to join us to talk about specifically the background to his fellowship painting, the montage that we've included in the bracket. I'm sure he'll chat art in general with us, but he has a great story to tell about when he started doing this montage work, and he's just going to share the story of how the painting came into being. So that is very exciting that he's going to be a special guest on Tuesday, and that we're going to have other special guests coming down the line. But Jerry is the first one who's going to join on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, the 25th of March.
Speaking of very special guests, in the chat room right now is Jordan Rennells from A Long Expected Soundscape.
Hey, Jordan!
And I guess we should also promote something that he's got going on that's really exciting, and that Kirsten, I believe you're involved in.
I am, yeah. Jordan's doing his fabulous Tolkien Reading Day celebration like he did last year, tomorrow. This time he's using, for those who don't know, really quickly, the soundscapes that Jordan creates are designed so that you can, there's Jim's got his complete Long Expected soundscape there. You can read The Lord of the Rings, or you can listen to the Andy Serkis reading, and you put Jordan's soundscape on in the background, and you get music and ambient sound effects and things to immerse you in Middle-earth whilst you're either reading for yourself or listening to the Andy Serkis audiobooks. And Jordan's done a bunch of soundscapes for other books as well. Last year for Reading Day, it was Fellowship of the Ring. This year, it's going to be excerpts from Return of the King, starting at noon tomorrow, Eastern time, noon Eastern. And they're amazing people. I'm reading. I am one of the lowliest people reading. Cliff, our very own Quick Beam, also reading. Ted Naismith is reading. Stephen Gallagher, composer for the War of the Rohirrim, is reading. All kinds of amazing people from the fandom, people from the Prancing Pony podcast, like just loads of our fellow fans. And as I say, illustrious folks like Ted Naismith and Stephen Gallagher are reading chunks of the Return of the King that you can hear from noon Eastern tomorrow. So that is a very exciting way to spend your Sunday.
He says it's over 8 hours already, and so you could spend your entire Sunday to listen to the wonderful words of Tolkien. One more programming note. Something else really fun happened today. We posted about it on our Facebook, and I'm sure you can find it on YouTube. Look at Tea with Tolkien's Tropy Awards. It was so wonderful to watch all these influencers and fans and accounts, and the Cliff was on there, and so many people were on there with fan voting for amazing awards for the Rings of Power season 2, and it's just a fun watch. So look up Tea with Tolkien's Tropy Awards. But we're asking you guys to vote here on this bracket. Let me bring it up on screen.
I'm going to bring up one more announcement, and it's just we're carrying on Tolkien Reading Day with our panel at the WonderCon on Friday at 6 o'clock, and we're going to have several people reading, including a rocket scientist from JPL, and she will be doing a special presentation during our reading day.
Sweet, awesome. Well,
WonderCon next weekend. Nice.
That is next week. And man, we've got so much going on right now. There's just so much. It's a good time to be a fan of Lord of the Rings. So this is our bracket. This is the last day to vote. You have until midnight Eastern today to vote on this first round. And then tomorrow, round 2 will kick off with the winners of today's voting round. We wanted to talk about all of the artwork possible. 64 brackets here. We've already done 2 of the brackets, landscapes and groups. So we're going to dive into portraits and story moments today, and talk a little bit about the artwork on display and a little history about the artists and why you should care. And maybe we can enlighten you on the value of some of these artworks. Artwork is subjective. Sometimes it's hard to see what how one compares to another. So let's just dive in real quick on our first matchup. Should we go to portraits, guys?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let's do that.
All right, let's do it.
Just you voters have been great. We're approaching 20,000 votes total across the entire tournament. And some of these matchups are as close over like 600-700 per individual matchup, and we have a 10 vote gap or a 12 vote gap. So kind of like we predicted, this is a hard tournament in the early rounds with seedings and stuff.
It's gonna get harder.
Yeah, and it's going to get
so
harder
much
still.
harder.
But yeah, so it's proving to be fun. So
yeah, very much
friends.
so.
Yeah,
well, let's start with the first contest in the portraits category. We've got Morgoth Crowned versus Sauron. And I guess what should we vote on? Who's more evil or who's more beautiful?
So we were really intentional in this matchup. It felt like we needed a Dark Lord kind of a matchup. Okay, you just unplugged me. Sorry.
I gotta say, this one, you know, we've talked on a couple of our live streams about the whole would I want to hang it on my wall test. I would not want either of these hanging on my wall, but I do think they're both extraordinary pieces. Yeah, I like, let's look at the Morgoth Crowned one. If we go to the frame that's just, so this one, it's so sort of unexpected.
Yeah.
Like it's not how I would envisage Morgoth at all. It looks, I think I said the other day about a picture that it was kind of sci-fi. This looks very sort of sci-fi to me. But it's such a cool piece. The way the light of the Silmarils is kind of shining. It's almost like, you know, spooky Halloween where you hold your torch under your face and shine up.
Yep.
You've got that light kind of shining down, and he's so imperious and contemptuous looking. And
Yeah.
Does his face look like Azog from the Hobbit films to anybody else?
You know, I first thought about the Mouth of Sauron in it.
Mouth of Sauron is where I went. I mean, he's got some cracks around his mouth, and it's very much feels like Bruce Spence's lips. Hard to describe. And the jewels remind me of Thanos getting the Infinity Stones. So I like that too.
Huh.
So it's a kind of a corrupting or a corrupted image, which I think is very much in keeping with the spirit of Tolkien. And so
it's a full crown. It's not just the Silmarils. It's the full crown with what looks like thorns and everything like that. It just
or spikes at least. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is
you would know in his presence he was evil. I mean, he doesn't even have to do anything.
It's by a British, relatively new digital artist. So that's a digital piece named J.M. Kilpatrick, or at least that's what he goes by professionally. I think he goes by something more familiarly. I saw one comment on that Morgoth Crowned from someone that was enthusing. He says this is like the best rendition of Morgoth that he's ever seen, because usually Morgoth is depicted in gigantic scale with lots of armor, and you don't see any humanizing effect with him. But this is much different
and scarier. But on the flip side, here's Sauron, but more as a creature rather than a humanoid or a human type thing. I think in at most people's mind's eye, Sauron is a human inside a body of armor, but this is very much a creature aesthetic, and I like it.
You remember the blob floating around after he'd been killed? And he turned into a blob.
For me, this is post corruption, post a downfall of Numenor, unable to take on a beautiful or seductive form. We're going to see in the next matchup an Anatar portrait, which is going to be very, very much. This guy looks elvish, and yet he's not. This is not. I mean, this is like if you removed Sauron's helm, this is what he looks like now. This is Darth Vader unmasked.
His internal corruption made visible externally, which I love. And I also, this is unusual in all the pieces, in all 64 pieces, this kind of, I'm not sure if it's pencil or charcoal, but I love that you see the individual strokes of it's possibly a charcoal pencil. It's such a cool sketch that I really enjoy how different this is from many of the kind of big scale oil paintings, watercolors. This has a real intimacy to it in a way, but I feel like his face is almost moving, like it's melting as we're watching it. He's just so corrupted.
Well, you don't see any, just like with the other one, you don't see very many paintings, or not that I can recall, of Sauron not in armor or not as Avatar. You don't see like corrupted, ghoulish type figure. You'd see either armor or Anatar. There's like no in between. So I like it because it's a way to look at the character that we don't normally get a look at.
Is this the end game? If Gollum had kept the ring?
Huh.
Well, we've already seen Gollum corrupted. The end game for Gollum keeping the ring is a ring wraith. The life is sucked out of him. But this is at least an interim step, I think.
Okay.
It does kind of look like the physical Gollum that they did or in a bit of the movie clips a little bit. Now that you say that, I mean, like.
So, Kirsten, do you see Charlie Vickers pulling off this look at some point?
Charlie Vickers can pull off anything, but my goodness, who knows where they're going to go with Anatar / Sauron. But when you look at the two together as well, you definitely see who's in charge there. You know who's the boss at this pairing.
Yeah, now, exactly.
One thing about the artist here is a guy named Warren Mayhew. I think that's how you pronounce it. He's a Kiwi, and he was involved with the Jackson films.
Yeah, he's done some statues for What a Workshop.
Right. So you look at him and say, I wonder what Peter Jackson would think of this. And I'm thinking he'd probably like this version of Sauron.
Oh, yeah. The horror director in him would have loved this.
Yeah.
All right. Our next matchup is Goldberry versus Anatar. Two golden hair surprises.
Blonde on blonde contest here, if you like your blondes.
I had to go with Anatar because I'm just not a fan of Tom Bombadil or Goldberry. That's just
stop it.
It is like literally my least favorite part of the books. I'm not
gonna lie. Boo!
We'll quickly jump in and say, in contrast to Josh,
I like it because I've read it more times, but I will tell you the first time or two reading through the book, I read through that part fast because I'm like, this is really boring. So I just have never fallen in love with those two characters. But it's a nice looking art. So I voted for Anatar just because I'm not a fan of Goldberry.
I am a huge fan of Goldberry. She is my favorite of the female characters. I just love that she and Tom both are kind of a mystery, but I love that Goldberry has this great power. I love that in spite of Tom being oldest and not affected by the ring, I feel like Goldberry has the upper hand in their relationship, which I kind of love as well. But I love the way they interact as well. It's weird because there's these such powerful characters who kind of are above and beyond the norm of what we meet, and all those endless discussions about who Tom is, what Tom is, and yet they're partnership is presented in such a human marriage way, and it's kind of the only relationship that we see really. Sam and Rosie eventually, but we don't see much of that we see a couple just kind of getting on with their day-to-day life, and Goldberry does her washing. And I know Goldberry's washing day is entirely different from my loading my laundry into the machine, but there's something very human about it, in spite of the fact that these two characters are so something extra and more and godlike and who knows what. At the same time, they interact in this charmingly delightful married couple kind of way, and I love that about them. And I love Goldberry's power, and I love her kind of putting up with Tom and his foibles and his ring-a-ding-dong-dilloing are all over the place. And I love this picture of her. I think it's absolutely beautiful. So I love
it because she's almost the epitome of nature. Yeah, or at least the waters, the growing things. I mean, she just sort of seems to be, like a part of it. It's part of her, and she's part of it. I love that. But
Anna
this
Lee is
Anatar
actually
will do.
Anna Lee's a Chinese artist, relatively young. This is a 2016 piece. We've seen other Chinese artists here, like if you remember in the group category, the Jian Guo, very intricate, almost a stained glassy, multi-component thing. This picture itself does not strike me as especially Chinese, so it's fascinating to see this
Watercolor. It's
this
beautiful
culture
watercolor.
expressing and finding Goldberry
But
in
you
this
do
watercolor.
you
Yeah.
do get water lilies quite often in
Yeah.
Asian art. So the
Yeah.
water lily is kind of an Asian thing. And this also reminds me of a little bit of the dolphin piece that we spent time discussing the other night. That again, that sort of watercolor look, and yeah, it's very attractive. And it's up against.
Does it go on your wall, Kirsten?
Yeah, it probably would. It probably would. This dude wouldn't. I don't
Okay.
trust him at all. But I love this. I think it's a beautiful piece.
David Gresset or Gresset, I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. He's French. Again, he's an illustrator. Has done a lot of works, particularly in the Silmarillion arena. So hence Anatar.
Does this add anything to the Anatar lore? I mean, in this contest, there's so much detail going on in the Goldberry piece, and there just isn't much going on here with this portrait of Anatar. I don't know. It's just.
I think one thing that's cool about it is that Rings of Power means that more people now know who Anatar is, and the whole deal about him being seductive and fair and all of that. But prior to Rings of Power, maybe a lot of fans only knew Sauron and did not know his fair form as Anatar. And so it's kind of cool just to see someone rendering that. I also like that for all that he's golden and definitely attractive in this picture, there's something about that face. There's something kind of menacing, the tightness of the mouth. There's some steel. That is the steel fist inside the velvet glove there. So I think that the artist has very well captured that something can be, look fair and feel foul, as Sam might tell us.
Sure, that's right. And he does have a bit of a foul look to him, really. Yeah.
Well, the next contest is Bilbo versus Smaug, a rematch from the second Hobbit movie.
That's right.
This is great.
That's right.
I think the thing I like about young Bilbo here, let me see if I can get the close up, is again, it's hard to get away from the movie inspiration. I think Ian Holm and Martin Freeman are such perfect Bilbos, and they've really captured the essence and imagination in their performance of Bilbo Baggins. How do you start to render a Bilbo that isn't either of them? And this is kind of in between. He almost has like a very modern haircut here. A little less curly than the Peter Jackson movies. But this one feels much more like a portrait inspired by Tolkien himself. And I'm not sure if Tolkien ever thought he was Bilbo, but...
Well, what this picture reminds me of is of the photograph of Tolkien sitting in front of a huge tree. I think he even has a pipe.
Yeah.
And so you could probably search for that photograph of Tolkien and say, well, I guess Sarah Morello was kind of taking that inspiration and then putting on top of that young Bilbo. When Kirsten and I were talking about this earlier, it almost has a Martin Freeman-esque feel to the image. Not quite, but you get that sensibility to it. But I think you're right, Justin. I think it is in some ways channeling the professor himself and put him in front of a tree.
I think that's a great point, Justin. I like the detail in this one. I like the leather work on the satchel there. You can really see there's like some Celtic knotwork on the strap of the leather satchel. You can see the patterning on his waistcoat. And then the Shire sort of receding into the distance, and it looks like almost little daisies or buttercups in the meadow that he's sitting in. There's a lot of beautiful detail. I think this is a digital image. Is that right, Jim? It looks like it's
I'm not sure. It does have a digital look to it.
Yeah, it
but-
looks like it's a digitally created image, but it's a very beautiful. Oh, look at that. That's great.
Your microphone's broken, Kathy. But yeah, the vest is the same. Look at that. I mean, straight from Tolkien himself.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
With the round buttons and stuff. But he's up against the great Smaug, and there's been so many different renditions of Smaug over the years. In fact, remember how much effort was put by the studio to keep Smaug under wraps until the movie came out? Like, they did not want to reveal what Smaug looked like, because he's such an iconic, might be one of the most iconic dragons besides Pete.
Besides Pete, I love it.
Yeah.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, better.
Okay, yeah, I took the dongle out, so the headphones are going off.
All right.
I was just gonna ask, is the smoke coming out of his pipe almost look like a musical,
It did look like a stave. I know what you mean. It did look a little bit like a stave.
On young Bilbo, yeah.
I don't think it actually is, but it totally looks a little bit like a stave.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because it wouldn't have made sense. I would expect that from Gandalf.
Do we have any
possibly.
information on Smaug here? What the medium is?
I don't know. Angus McBride is a classic Tolkien artist. He's Scottish for Kirsten. Or at least he's of Highland Scottish parents. He's actually born in London. He
This one, a
has done a
poster
ton
or
of illustrations.
a calendar? Was this one of the calendar? 1999?
I am not sure if it went through a calendar. A few of his paintings are oil. Mostly he preferred it to work, and I'm not sure. It's gouache, gouache colors on illustration boards, which is probably what this is.
That's what this looks like to me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's always hard to tell on a computer screen, but that's what this looks like.
Yeah.
This is, it's such a cool one, because it's such an unusual perspective and hard to pull off. The way he's had to, it's clever the way he's bent the neck up, because he's had to like contract the perspective. If you had a very, very long dragon body, it would be really difficult to see that. You'd end up just seeing the head, really. And so it's very clever the way he's kind of bent the neck, and then the body goes down a little bit. So you've got kind of this S shape.
And the tail comes up the back.
Which means that Smaug can be coming straight at you, but it still works. You're not just seeing a face.
And obviously that straight at you perspective is fascinating on this. This is the bird's eye view of Smaug, I think.
And I like the way, obviously his claws are sort of to claw at you, but it almost looks like he's swimming through the air here.
Yeah.
I love that it almost looks like his claws are getting involved in the way that he's moving forward through the air. I think that's a really cool, there's a real
He's probably
action to
getting
this.
ready to grab whatever his eyes are looking at.
Yeah, so you get this really consuming idea. Smaug is the gatherer, he is the hoarder, and you do get that kind of grabbing picture right there in a very dynamic way.
Are those the green eagles behind him?
Looks like it.
Yeah, looks
So
like
is
it.
Dale or Lake Town?
It must be Dale because it's in the mountains.
Yeah, it must be
up
Dale.
there. But the other thing I want to remark about the talent of Angus McBride here is Smaug looks like he's a character with agency. He's not a beast. He is not. There's intelligence here, almost, and it reminds me of Gremlins. Even though Gremlins are little gremlins, right? They still have a brain and they still have agency, and some of them even talk. So you can see that here, that this is not just a monster or a beast. Like his entire pose, the way he's looking at the camera. I mean, he is acting with intent. And
there's a purpose to what he's doing.
Yeah.
So I think that's incredible to capture a creature, but then add intelligence in a painting. Incredible work.
And personality too. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're right, Justin. It's very cool.
So that's the matchup. Again, you guys get to vote for this. Who wins this match, Bilbo or Smaug?
I voted Bilbo. I had to go with Bilbo on this one.
Yeah, this one's gonna be, you know when it's tough in just the first round, how crazy it's gonna be moving forward.
Yeah.
Indeed.
All right. Next one is Gimli's Gift and the Harp of Galadriel.
Right.
I am an unread person. Explain what Gimli's Gift is here.
Well, and someone along the way will have to explain Colleen Doran, who is a wonderful friend of the OneRing.net. Gimli's, well, I'm not sure. I haven't gone in close on it, because the main Gimli's Gift is the 3 locks of hair from Galadriel.
Yeah, I'm assuming this is when he has set them in a gem to
Right.
keep them. So this is probably what is nice about this is we have to assume, I think, that this is when Legolas is looking at it when they met up together, because they stayed friends after the parting of the Fellowship.
Traveled.
Gimli and Legolas spent time together. And so we know that Galadriel, even if you've only seen the movies, you know that Galadriel gave Gimli 3 locks of her golden hair. He asked for 1 strand, she gave him 3. And then he later sets them to make them a jewel to keep those hairs. And so I'm assuming that this is Legolas at some point in the future, after the breaking of the Fellowship, when he and Gimli are getting together for a weekend, lads' weekend together, and Gimli goes, "Oh, by the way, I need to show you what I did with those 3 strands of her golden hair that Galadriel gave me. Check this out." And Legolas is like, "Well, that's cool, dude." And that's the moment that Colleen has captured here, I think.
Well, and some more backstory on the 3 golden hair gift. Legolas, as an elf, would have known the backstory. And it is an astonishing one, because this is not the first time that someone has asked Galadriel for a strand of her golden hair, which was particularly magical. And it goes all the way back to the creator of the Silmarils, Feanor, who somehow got this fascination with Galadriel, and she refused to give him one of her golden hair threads. So the fact, and then lay on top of that all of the animosity through ages and ages between the elves and the dwarves. And you can see it in the Hobbit movies a bit with Thorin and Thranduil, but it goes deep and far and murderously. And so Legolas would understand this gift and be astonished by it.
Yeah.
And so the idea that you're seeing this moment where Legolas is saying, this is real and this is permanent. Gimli has set it into something which will be an heirloom of his house forever and ever. And as far as the elves are concerned, this is an heirloom denied to Feanor himself.
Yeah.
And so you can see, why Legolas would be just gobsmacked. That's Legolas gobsmacked as far as he gets. But
and that's why in the film, when Gimli is talking about how sad and how depressed and how it's such a loss to be out of the presence, and then he mentions the gift and the smile on Legolas's face, because again, he knows that this relationship is solid, that Gimli earned that, because she wouldn't have just, we know from that history, she would never have just given up her hair for no reason. It was like a peace offering, elves and dwarves together. And
that's right.
So yeah, it's really just a beautiful sequence when Gimli shares that with Legolas.
And a little bit on the artist, Colleen Duran is one of the most well-known and respected Tolkien artists and fantasy artists. She's featured in Ringer's Lord of the Fans, and in recent years, she's become the primary artist for Neil Gaiman and all of his recent books. Never mind the other stuff going on with Gaiman, but the artwork has been winning awards. Colleen is constantly nominated for all types of art awards, Eisner Awards, and stuff like that. And she is just one of the best out there. She's been very accessible to fans, and she had some health issues over the last couple of years, and so her art output has lessened of late. But she's still active, and this is, again, you guys touched on all the reasons why you should appreciate this. There's emotion. There's emotional intelligence in his face here, and again, portraying any emotion on a page or a canvas is so difficult, and testament to her
and
skill.
Also, she captures Legolas so well there, because as Jim was saying, his reaction has got to be one of like wonder and astonishment and delight and all of that. But we know that it would be inappropriate. It just wouldn't seem like the character if she tried to draw him being like, what? I mean, that's just not. And so it's like, well, what do you do to show this deep emotion in a character who doesn't really show deep emotion? Well, look at how his cheek is kind of flushed. I think that's such a great touch, that it's this kind of, that's about as emotional as he gets, but she really gets it, that within the range of the character, she shows that there's real emotion going on.
And this is
There's
up
an
against
look to his face, I think.
The Harp of Galadriel. And again, I'm an unwashed, unlearned, unread nerd. What is the Harp of Galadriel? I've never even heard of this.
Well, the elves, they like to play musical instruments. And I guess Galadriel had a harp. I don't remember.
Did she use her magic golden hair as the strings or something?
That's the strings.
It's beautiful. The harp is beautiful. It's got a swan up at the top.
Yeah.
I mean,
Galadriel is.
I didn't recall seeing anything about Galadriel's harp in the readings that I've done over the years, but I may have forgotten or missed something. But I was like, Galadriel's harp. I'm like, I don't even know, like whatever. So I ended up voting for.
I don't know that it
Gimli's gift, because I was just like, it's it for the reasons we talked about with Gimli's gift. I liked it better, but this one I was just like, it's very well done, but I'm like, I don't recall this at all.
No, I think, and people in the chat can correct us if we're wrong, but I think this is entirely Steve Hickman's creation, which is cool. But I don't remember Tolkien ever saying that Galadriel played the harp. But there's no reason why she wouldn't necessarily. I mean, she's around for a long time, plenty of time to learn an instrument.
I love the dress. The whatever's going on underneath, she's got like the outer velvet or satin or whatever it is, but all that frilly stuff in between, which is like another layer. Plus, there's a lot of layers to this outfit.
Yeah, and so what you're seeing here, in contrast to the deep V-neck flowing, almost luminescent attire, like you said, Kathy, this is almost Galadriel shielded or multi-layered. Certainly, I don't think there are any passages that talk about Galadriel actually playing a harp. There are lots of passages where Galadriel is doing poetry or associated with music.
Yeah.
And the fact that, as far as the viewer goes, the harp is between me and Galadriel. So there's a kind of remoteness to this piece, a kind of high beauty. If this may be how Sam would see the elves. These are not approachable people. These are higher, loftier, more noble, impenetrable beauty going on. And even the face of this picture is, it's almost not exactly human. But this high, it's almost, I guess it's almost like a Roman nose. It's just high.
And inspired by a very Swedish or Nordic hairstyling and colors and lighting here.
I like the nod to her swan boat on the top of the harp there.
Yeah.
You got a
Steve,
little...
braid. You see the braid going down? And if you look down near the bottom, it looks like it's been silver tipped
Ah,
at the bottom to hold it straight.
yeah.
So it probably doesn't
Steve-
come off in the stream, but when you go to the vote on our voting page, and the link's in the description of the YouTube video, you can get a high-res close-up. You can zoom in on the JPEG at your leisure, but the technical ability on display here is incredible. This Steve Hickman is an amazing painter. And you can see every fold. You can see the difference in materials between the silk and the satin and the filigree on her shoulder. There's a lot going on when it comes to lighting and shading here. Like I am awestruck with the technical ability here when it comes to texture and material. And in fact, yeah, I'm almost leaning personally toward voting for this one, even though I love Colleen. But this is a master at painting here, and I am impressed.
I just got a shout out for the 1970s style green globed light above her, and there's another one further down into the forest. So those green globes, I'm like, oh my god, my grandmother had lights like that at her house.
All right,
Steve Hickman's another award winner, just like Colleen, maybe different awards, but he's got a Hugo Award, Chelsea Awards, Spectrum Gold Award. So
those are huge. Those are huge. He's a Hugo Award-winning artist. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, that's big.
Mostly does book covers, a few stamps he actually has done, magazines and so on. So fun guy.
That's great. Both accomplished artists. So this matchup, again, we leave it in your guys' hands. I know if you don't know anything about the artists and you just look at these, I have a feeling that a lot of just casual fans would just vote for the one on the right because it's when you look at it in detail, it's so well executed. But both, again, are just incredible pieces of art from incredible artists. The next matchup is amazing. Amazing. This is my favorite matchup of the whole contest.
Gollum versus Gob.
This Tove Jansson Gollum is so, I just love him. It's so great. The little Bilbo who looks like he's wearing his nightshirt and nightcap. Can we look at that one? The Tove Jansson, exactly. I mean, I don't know how many Moomin Troll fans we have amongst staff or watching, but I'm a huge fan of the Moomins, and I just love Jansson's Hobbit illustrations, all of them. His Gollum here is so...
It's her Gollum here.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Her Gollum is so extraordinary and so unlike anything I've seen as a Gollum. I love it. I just think it's so cool, and I love how Bilbo looks in it. I've never seen Bilbo attired quite like that in other illustrations. So
looks a little bit like Scrooge when he woke up to see the ghosts, with his night hat on.
It looks like Gollum's face is melting.
Is that like seaweed?
It's a crown of seaweed.
Well, and it looks like his face is melting. It's like he's so much larger. I don't. It's way out there.
Well, let me ask you this: in the books,
it's not my speed, but it's. I mean,
in the books, does Bilbo ever get a clear view of Gollum? Like when Bilbo first comes into the cave,
Sure, he sits right next to him.
Okay, so it's never like, oh, how big is this creature, type thing. All right, that's fun.
Yeah, this is a creature that very much looks like it would live under a mountain. In the lakes under the mountain. I mean, even if it may or may not look like what we think Gollum looks like, it totally looks like it's in its place. That this is where this kind of a creature would be from.
I think it would be fine for Gollum if it wasn't so big. I mean, if we're trying to be literal as to the way that Tolkien describes him and having been some kind of halfling, character, it doesn't make sense for him to be so big. So maybe Tove Jansson has made a mistake from that point of view, but I don't care. I just find this so charming and delightful, and yeah, I just love it.
And he's up against Gollum from world famous Frank Frazetta. And don't be nervous about that website URL. It's safe for work. Wait, maybe it's not, because he
No, Frazetta Girls refers to his daughter and granddaughter, whoever kind of took over the estate, and are preserving his legacy of art across a whole spectrum.
Frank Frazetta, of course, is most famous for illustrating the Conan the Barbarian movie poster with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's kind of his aesthetic, is the big, classic, bare-skinned, muscular fantasy dude with a big sword and an axe and a girl, hanging off his hip. Frazetta, it was just an incredible painter. And Frazetta was an artist working with Ralph Bakshi on the animated Lord of the Rings in the mid '70s, when Frazetta was still coming up and needed a job, and everyone wanted to work on Lord of the Rings, and so Bakshi put him to work. So I don't think this was related to the Bakshi work. I think he painted this before the Bakshi movies went into production, and this is just his treatment of Gollum as he read it in the books, and I love it. I love the pose. I love everything.
Well, and of course he does ride he does have a little boat that he uses too, and he paddles so quietly. He's such a skilled person that he just silently crosses the lake.
Yeah, there's a lot of action here, isn't there?
Yeah.
Like, you can sense that his legs are doing this, paddling him, and the ripples spreading out behind him. And, Frazetta, of course, also Star Wars artist. I think the original Star Wars poster was Frank Frazetta. But there's quite a lot of amazing Star Wars art from Frazetta as well. That's a pretty friggin' terrifying Gollum, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, this one, per Frazetta's mode of muscle bound, this one is a very muscle bound Gollum. I mean, he's naked, but
going by would you hang it on your wall? Tove Jansson's adorable. Yes. This one, no thank you. It's brilliant, but it's kind of terrifying.
Yeah, well, he's looking at you the way Smaug was looking at us.
That's true. Right on you.
Yeah, one of these is going to psychologically damage your children at night, and the other one is fun and fancy free. Our next matchup is two things that will give your kids nightmares as well. Shelob and Nazgul. Now, we talked a lot about this the other day, just because the artwork is so amazing. Kirsten, you had things to say about the spider.
Oh, well, let me say first up, I'm a massive arachnophobe. I hate spiders. I find them terrifying. The kind of abdomen of the spider here is terrifying to me, because it looks like she's about to release a gazillion offspring.
Oh my God, I thought that was a cave going around. That's literally
that's the bottom of the body.
That's the rest of the spider.
Yep, gross.
Yep.
But the face, it's sort of kind of cute, and it kind of reminds me of the Pepe the prawn out of the Muppets. So
Or Gonzo,
there's something kind of whack. If I could just ignore the large abdomen, there's something kind of wacky about this Shelob that
and then she's got fingers. What's up with that? Snakes? I mean, they've already got 8 legs. Do they really need fingers?
No, but that's kind of cool.
Yep.
And I like these little hobbits who look a bit like Keebler elves. They might make us some cookies. But it's cool. I love the file of Galadriel in the picture here. I like that detail, yeah.
So one of the things to remember about Joan Wyatt, and you can see it on the date of the painting. There you go. Ta-da.
There he is.
It's 1979. Who was the most popular Tolkien illustrator of 1979? It was the Hildebrandt brothers. That was defining the popular psyche of, here is what Tolkien looks like. Joan Wyatt is completely different. And she actually did a series. You can, if you go online, you can find, I think it's like maybe 20 or so of her paintings of various Lord of the Rings scenes. And, they're not exactly all like this, but they all are very, very different takes on the, so what I liked, and I'm glad we included her in this March Madness, is she illustrates a very different kind of way of thinking, in the same way that Tove Jansson was different than the Frank Frazetta one. So. And that's part of the glory of this whole contest, is that we're getting to see lots of different artistic versions and interpretations. Later on, I hope we still get to them. We're going to see Core Block, very, very different interpretation of what Middle Earth could look like. And that's part of the mind stretching. It's not all. It doesn't all look like it has to come from the pen of John Howe and Alan Lee or the Hildebrandt brothers or whatever it is that we bonded with. It can have our worlds expanded that way.
Yeah, I love seeing something different. Even if I go, that's not how I see it. I just love seeing something that's different.
Yeah. Yeah.
And again, this is probably my favorite piece of the entire competition. It is so colorful. It's high contrast, high saturation. You've got a hobbit hiding in the tree that you don't notice at first glance because your eye is attracted to so many other things going on in the painting here. Your eye first is attracted to the glowing red eyes, and then the bright blue and the horse silhouetted back there. But then, as you start looking around, you're like, oh, there's a hobbit in that tree, and this slowly reveals so much the more you look at it. Every leaf is rendered. And, it's not just watercolors or gouache strokes or anything. Like you see every single leaf on the ground there. So the detail in this is incredible, and I just love this.
It feels almost very 4K quality, like picture.
Yeah, and he's also he does 2D work. He also does 3D or sculpting kinds of things, and you can almost feel that kind of sculpted feel. Josh, you probably see this as a collectible at some point.
It could be a cool premium type piece or something. Yeah, for sure.
What I love most about this is that he has absolutely instilled this picture with dread. I mean, you feel the horrifying dread of the hobbit in the tree there. And as you said, Justin, you don't even notice it at first. You're just like, oh, wow, that's a pretty terrifying ring wraith. But then when you see the effect the ring wraith is having on, I don't know if it's Frodo, if it's Sam, but it's just absolutely... It gives me chills looking at it. Again, I don't think I'd want it on my wall because I think it's terrifying, but it is spectacular.
Yeah, so it's an interesting competition here on this one. Again, if you don't do any research and you just like a casual fan, like, oh, the right one looks better. But for all the reasons that Jim and everybody was explaining, like the context and the time frame of Shelob 1979, breaking from the classic norm, the popular norm of the Hildebrandt brothers. There's so much going on in both of these that are worthy of your vote, but only one will move forward. And as we move forward, the next contest is Radagast the Magician versus Frodo and Sam in Between Lands. Two very different art styles here.
Really different. Yeah.
I like the Radagast the Magician, Radagast the Brown, because it just feels like how he's been portrayed. Not even really talking about obviously the films, but just like what's out there about him, very naturey. And the Frodo and Sam piece, it honestly felt very religious, like I would see it in a church.
That's his
And
style, though. Yeah.
it just, I don't know, it just didn't, that for that reason it kind of turned me off in a way. And I say that as a, you know, a person of faith. It just was like weirdly, just, I don't know, it just was felt weird to me. Whereas the Radagast piece felt more Middle Earth. You know, gave me more of that vibe, and it's beautifully done too. I just think it's really nice.
I love that the top of his staff is a raven.
That's
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah, yeah. You know, it's
Yep.
birds and rabbits and squirrels, and it's just that, you know, he's just hanging out with his peeps.
I think it's a beautiful piece. I love the landscape to it as well. I like that he has a dignity that was perhaps robbed from him in Peter Jackson's movie. I
A
like that
little bit.
Radagast has been given his dignity here. I don't like, if I was being hypercritical, and I'm sorry, Angelo Montanini, I couldn't paint this. It's beautiful, but I'm not loving his right hand outstretched there. I'm not sure that he's quite, and hands are difficult, we know. Not sure he's quite got the hand right there.
Yeah, yeah. It
Um,
looks like for a
that's
It
moment
is
it
a
looks
little.
like he's got six
It is
fingers.
a little big, sticking out of his.
But, you know, when we looked at this one briefly the other day when we were first kind of launching March Madness, it was interesting because Jay Johnston's pieces are specifically meant to look like religious icons. And somebody in the chat pointed out when we were launching this that this piece has a certain religious feel to it. It reminds us of, for example, St. Cuthbert of Northumberland, who supposedly communed with the animals and communicated with them, and he lived out on Lindisfarne on Holy Island. And there's a sort of feeling of Radagast being like one of these early Christianity, early saints who had these relationships with animals. And so although this isn't obviously overtly meant to look like a religious piece, there is kind of a saint-like quality to this, which makes it an interesting pairing with the Jay Johnston.
Right, right.
Versus and so this one is up against an interesting piece made in 2022 by Jay Johnstone.
Johnstone.
Jay Johnston.
Yeah,
And
Jay Johnstone's a British illustrator, and this is the kind of stuff that he does. It's almost like Greek Orthodox iconography.
yeah, it's very Byzantine. The Byzantine period came before the Renaissance period, where you had a lot of like Christian monasticism. You know, a lot of art was made specifically for churches. So a lot of use of the holy halo around heads and stuff like that. So as soon as you see this, it's like, it's very Byzantine. You can see this, that it's on a piece of paper with ornate gold foil border and stuff like that.
And the halos are gold. I'll see if I can prove it. This is actually one. Oops, no, it's on my wall right over there somewhere, but you can't see it that well. See my wife.
Bright light.
Sorry, bright light. Yeah.
I think Jay's style is brilliant. I love it. I love that he intentionally leans into this iconography mode.
Yeah.
I love all the detail. The more you look at this, you know, there's a Gandalf on Shadowfax, there's a rider, there's a little tiny golem peeking out.
Morgul, is it because you've got Gondor, so is that Minas Morgul?
Yeah, you've got Mount
Mount
Doom, you've got Minas Tirith and Minas Morgul. They're between the two towers. That if those are the two towers that it refers to, let's not get into that debate. But yeah, it's they're caught between the darkness and the light, and I just think it's, again, if it's not your cup of tea, it's not your cup of tea. But I love also that he's doing something that's so different, that he's like, I want to render these Tolkien scenes in the manner of religious iconography, and I just think they're so cool.
Yeah, in fact, he has books you can buy. He calls them Tolkienography, and so that iconography approach. And he has so many. He's got wonderful versions of Gandalf. He has wonderful versions of Aragorn as Elisar.
He has a triptych or two. He's got a couple triptychs.
Yep.
How
Well, and he came to our first Hobbit Oscar party, and when we had the art show, because I know he was in the art show, but he was at that party and everything.
Yeah, we featured Jay's stuff quite a lot on the One Ring.
Yeah.
how come there hasn't been a lot of Middle Ages style artwork of Middle Earth stories? I mean, this pops out because we haven't seen a lot of art style from the Middle Ages, and I wonder why more people aren't inspired by the Middle Ages when dealing with Tolkien's story.
Well, it's interesting because to some extent, you would want to go back a little further to the Dark Ages, as they were known, and the time of the earliest sort of Saxon invaders, and if you go back to that, the post the fall of the Roman Empire. Britain at that time, you could argue, is the most likely candidate if there was that this legendarium is about a real point in Britain's history. It would be most likely to be the time after the Romans had left and Britain sort of slid back into what historians now say is unfairly called the Dark Ages.
You had the plague too, so that's part of it.
Well, the plague went on for a long time, though, so hundreds and hundreds of years of Black Death, and the medieval period was the worst. Like 14th century is some of the worst Black Death time. The Black Death was not, when we talk about the early Saxon invaders, the Jutes, etc., in the kind of 6th century AD, plague wasn't really an issue then. But what's interesting to me here is this kind of iconography feels particularly Catholic. And I think that's interesting to say, okay, well, let's look at Tolkien's own faith and reflect his world, not so much in what we think historically the world might have looked like if Middle Earth was a real part of Britain's legendarium, but his own faith view of the world. How do we interpret the visuals of his legendarium through the perspective of his faith? And I just think that's an interesting approach here.
Right, and so what that would mean in either Greek Orthodox or Catholic iconography, and it would be really fascinating if we can get Jay Johnstone on here just to talk about, because the placement of hands or the attitude of the heads and so on they all are meaning laden in that kind of iconography. It would be interesting to hear him take one of his pieces and break it down.
Well, this is a great contest here, and I hope we've highlighted some of the reasons to vote for the one that you might not have. Next one, a couple illustrations. Death of Beleg versus Luthien and Morgoth.
Yeah, the last matchup in this region of Portals.
Wow.
One of the things I love about both of these is the use of contrast. To use be a pretentious art word is the chiaroscuro of this, the way that they both have so much darkness, and so the bits of light really pop. The light on the face of Beleg and shining from his armor, or the light that is Luthien surrounded by this massive cloud of Morgoth. It's just great use of dark and light in both of these pictures. I think they're both stunning.
Can someone explain to me what the Death of Beleg is?
Yeah. So this would be out of the Children of Húrin series, one of the 3 major stories out of the Silmarillion. The person who is cradling the dead Beleg is Turin Turambar, who is a human. Beleg Strongbow, who is the one who has been killed now in this picture, has been killed by Turin. Turin was captured by a band of orcs in Nargothrond and carried off. And Beleg has been his loyal, faithful friend for decades. he's a human, and Beleg's been around a lot longer than that. But he is the definition of a faithful friend. In some ways, take Sam and Frodo and just raise it to a level of nobility and this whole kind of first aged myth, and that's Beleg to Turin. Beleg comes to Turin's rescue, and Turin has been enslaved and chained by a group of orcs. They're carrying him back to Morgoth, and but Beleg finds them, attacks the orcs, drives them off, and he's freeing Turin. Turin wakes up and thinks he's being attacked by orcs again, grabs his sword, and slays his friend before he realizes it. And so the pathos of this whole scene is exactly that. It is as if, in the Jackson movie, instead of "Don't you recognize your Sam?" and Frodo, tosses Sting away. No, in this scene, Frodo kills Sam. But this is a first age version of that. It is this deep friendship that has been marred by this tragic turn of affairs. And so,
it's a great tragedy.
It is. It's this pathos. I love this picture a lot. This rendition of the scene because Turin is completely enshrouded in black. To Kirsten's point, we don't even see his face, but the sorrow is heartbreaking.
And it looks like.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say it does look like that the art piece itself is on dark paper, and so they're actually drawing the highlights in. Usually people start with a white canvas and bring in all the color and shadow, but here the artist is bringing in the highlights.
There's raindrops, which are just fascinating.
This could be chalk or pastel. Again, it's hard to tell on a computer screen, but it looks to me like it's a chalk on a dark paper. And that, as Kathy just said, the raindrops, it's the pathetic fallacy of the picture as well, that nature reflects the great sorrow that's happening in this moment. It's absolutely just a heartbreaking, deeply sad, and I'm not sure I would want it on my wall because it's damn sad.
But it is beautiful.
But what a stunning piece of work. Look how you can see the water on Beleg's face.
Yeah.
It looks like there are like drops on his cheek. Is that the rain, or are those Turin's tears?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just beautiful, isn't it? The rain and his tears are mixing on his friend's face.
Plus, Elena Kukhanova is Russian from Moscow, so the culture has a particular familiarity with tragic stories. So,
oh yes.
And our second appearance of Morgoth in our contest here, and once again a giant figure.
The crown is outstandingly. This reminds me of something like Eraserhead or something like that, with just the big head and the big hair.
Right. This is like Peter Jackson saying, "No, make it pointier, make it bigger."
Yeah, I like the overwhelming feeling of like power that it comes off of, like the odds that she's up against battling Morgoth. Like because of the scale and size between the two characters, there's a real sense of what she's up against, going up against Morgoth and everything. It's a really cool piece. This is the one that I voted for myself, but just because I thought the complexity between the two characters and the light and versus the dark, and like I said, just the power that comes from seeing Morgoth be so huge over the top of her, and that what she's got to go up against to overcome it, I thought was really cool.
I don't love this version of Morgoth. Doesn't mean I don't love the art, but I think he looks a little bit like a Decepticon or something from Transformers to me here. I'm a little bit like, but that said, again, we know, as I've said multiple times, I like versions of things that aren't how I would envisage them. So I'm not loving this version of Morgoth, but I love that it's not my version of Morgoth. But more than that, on this one, I don't know how you do this. What Turner Myrn has done here, like Luthien is barely even there. In a way, it's just a white blob, and yet she so clearly is there. That and that streak of highlight on Morgoth's thigh that lets us know that he is stepping towards her. It's like the unstoppable Terminator. Yeah, I mean, all of the artists in this entire competition, all 64 in our March Madness, are incredible, and I could not do what they do. But I look at something like this and I'm like, how do you do that? It's just a bunch of smudges, and yet it's clearly Luthien facing off against this relentless, massive foe. How the courage that so this piece, I maybe don't love it in terms of how I would imagine Morgoth, but I am utterly in awe of it. I do not know how you do what the artist has done here. I just think it's staggering.
This is the scene. It's the only example where a non-Valar has vanquished Morgoth, and she's doing it because of her song. This is art.
Singing.
Yeah, her singing, and to a degree her dancing. This is the scene that leads to Morgoth being overwhelmed with slumber, and they steal a Silmaril from him. All of the Noldor elves have been able to do nothing, and Luthien is the single elf who manages to, with Beren, secure a Silmaril. And get to marry Beren. Yeah.
You feel like he's
what
just
happens later.
He's striding forward and he's been stopped in his tracks, and it's just I don't know how. I haven't been able to vote because I haven't been able to get the link to work on my laptop, but I don't know how I would choose between these two, because I think they're both extraordinary, and I think they both capture such powerful moments.
And one of the other interesting factoid about Turner Moen is that he also makes medieval armor. And so, it'd be interesting to ask him, have you made this particular piece of armor? You can see why he might do an armor forward version of Morgoth, in contrast to the very first matchup on Portraits, where we saw Morgoth's and his crown in a very different rendition.
Well, this is going to be a tough one, especially for a lot of people like me who aren't familiar with the lore or the story behind the pieces. And I would just be voting on the art itself, the quality of the art itself, and both of them are fantastic. And I don't know where I'm going to vote yet, because I love both of these from an artistic standpoint. Well, that's the end of our third bracket. We've got one more bracket to go of story moments. How is everybody here on time?
I can stay for a bit longer, but maybe maybe half an hour. So, and then I'm going to have to.
Well,
we can pick up the pace maybe a little bit, unless we get snared by more great art.
Well, the next and final grouping that we've created are for story moments, and we've got 8 matches here. Again, we want you to vote on them by midnight Eastern tonight, and let's jump into the contest here. You can vote however you want. You can vote because you love the scene, or you can vote for the quality of the artwork, or you can vote for because you love the artist and you follow them on social. We don't care how you vote and your reasons for vote. Your vote is yours, and it's your personal vote, and you don't have to tell anybody who you voted for. But I'm going to tell you who I want you to vote for.
You can toss a coin if you want. I was being very indecisive the other day, so I said to my friend's cat, blink if I should choose this one. And the cat just stared at me, and I was like, okay, obviously.
Okay, it's the
All right, you got two scenes of Boromir here. Tell us about this artist.
Yeah, so this is a Russian artist, or actually a Ukrainian artist. He's born in Odessa, in 58, Sergei Yukimov. Yeah, he's I think he's one of the only or a few artists that was actually published with his art for illustrating the Lord of the Rings in the Russian renditions. He died in 2016, so he's no longer with us. As you can see, it's almost, we're back to kind of an iconographic rendition. It's not what we're going to see in basically the same scene, in a much more realistic version of it. You see, the three hunters in the background, in Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas coming to Boromir's rescue. You see him pierced in odd ways by many orc arrows. So it's a different rendition of an artistic impression of the scene.
Style-wise, it looks like a tapestry.
Yeah, it's very medieval, and obviously intentionally so. I mean, look at the shoes that Boromir is wearing. Those are definitely medieval shoes. As you said, Jim, it looks like iconography. It's very reminiscent of Saint Sebastian, martyred with many arrows piercing him. There's no real sense of perspective here. The three hunters are kind of floating behind him. It's just, how do we make them seem further away? Just make them smaller. But that, again, it's intentionally of that early medieval art period. I like how the white hand of Saruman is seen on the shield down at the bottom there. That's a nice nod. I like how the horn of Gondor is on the ground down there. There's a lot of really cool detail in here, and it's a strange style, but it's a style that I like.
It's very Byzantine.
Yeah. I'm trying to figure out how many orcs are dead, because on the right-hand side you see the face of one, and then you see these black legs off behind Boromir on the other side, and you're like, is that one animal, or one orc, or is there two of them? And then there's another one closer to Gimli, but I'm just trying to figure out how many people he killed.
And again, for comparison, here's an example again of Byzantine artwork. Some of the hallmarks of that era. Greek, Persia, of course, Ukraine area that is now known as the Ukraine. Byzantine artwork used a lot of these holy circles, but authenticity accuracy in perspective was not a feature of Proto-Renaissance art. There's the sense of scale and everything like that wasn't important to a lot of these frescoes, and so you can see that here where there isn't a lot of like layers of foreground, middle ground, background. It's just things on the canvas. So I do like that. Again, we talked about how there isn't a lot of artwork based on Middle Ages inspiration, but here we have another example of it. But it's up against a very classical style of painting, the Horn of Boromir from Matthew Stewart, with a ton of detail. Almost reminds me of Jerry Vanderstelt here.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I like that it feels like it captures both the films and the books. I also like that you could put it with, as I said the other night, with a few of the environment type pieces that Weta has made. You could take this and put this with their Boromir and Lurtz statue combo that they put out here a few years ago, and kind of put that with that. It's a really cool piece. I like how he is made to be standing there alone in kind of a final, heroic, brave act. And it's really cool. It's a really neat piece. I really like it a lot, actually. So I would definitely put this on my wall.
I mean, there's a bunch of dead orcs in Uruk underneath his feet as the others are still moving in on him.
I think it is extremely well done and, obviously extraordinary art, beautifully done. It's less interesting to me because it is so reminiscent of a scene from the movies. So it's not that's to take not to take anything away from it. I think it is beautifully done, and obviously we don't. This is Matthew Stewart's imagination because we don't see exactly this at any point in Peter Jackson's movies. This is his imagination of a real crowd gathering around and Boromir with his back against a tree almost. So I'm taking nothing away from Matthew Stewart, but to me, I'm just slightly more interested in something weird and wacky and totally different.
Yeah, and that's again 2 different art styles. One inspired by Eastern Orthodox, Byzantine, pre-Renaissance art, and one very much in the classical painting style. Our next one is 2 very similar pieces of art for many reasons. Ulmo Rises versus Ainu Lindale. Let's start with Ulmo Rises. Who is Ulmo, and what's he rising from?
Ulmo is essentially the Poseidon or the Neptune rendition of the Valar, one of the most powerful, the Valar over the oceans and water, the seas and streams and rivers and so on. A particularly feared Valar relative to Melkor or Morgoth, and almost an ally of the whole judgment that has happened toward the elves, towards Morgoth himself. So the person that he's meeting is a guy named Tuor, who is another man. He was the cousin of Turin. So another one of those early heroic men. Tuor has made his way or has found Gondolin, and there are prophecies about him. So this is Tuor making his way to the ocean on his way to discover armor and a sword, and to hear more prophetic pronouncements from Ulmo. And then he's going to turn around and go back and become almost an emissary of both doom and of hope back to Turgon and his elves that are hold themselves up in Gondolin in hopes of Morgoth not finding him. So that's
it's up against this one, which is more expressionistic. Again, no details, no fine details in this one from Anna Kulitz. Right. It's very sweeping brushstrokes, and meant to evoke action, movement. Where in the story do you think is this taking place? Is this the creation of?
It is. The Ainu Lindale is the creation story, and it is a creation story that's rooted in music. And so what you see are the Ainu part of the Ainu Lindale are the Einar, the Valar and the Maiar, all of these angelic kinds of beings, as they together sing Arda, the world, into creation. And so this is Anna Kulis's rendition of that kind of creation event, that creation moment. And you're seeing light and dark, all the forms of these various floating beings are her version of maybe the Ainur in their natural states. The ones that we hear more and more about in the histories of Middle Earth and the histories of Valinor are those that have decided to remain in Arda and to take on physical forms. They can take on other shapes, but this is this is the origin story, the primordial rendition of how everything that we know has been being created.
Quick question.
I love this. Yeah, go.
I was going to say on Ulmo Rises, is Ulmo the guy that is responsible for the drowning of Numenor?
He was the floating head that we saw in in that
Downfall.
landscape environment thing.
Yeah.
So,
Tidal wave.
is he responsible? You know, it's kind of an action of all of the Valar, but he's the dude that has the power over the ocean. So if you're going to get a big wave, it's probably going to be under Ulmo's jurisdiction.
The Ainulindale fascinates me because I feel like it's music captured as painting,
Yeah.
right? So I love this whole idea that the world was sung into being, that music creates something, and then this is kind of going the opposite way, that if music has rendered something physical in the creation of Arda, here you have something physical trying to represent music, and obviously there's no sound, but it's kind of, you've got synesthesia, like Messiaen famously as a composer said that various chords had colors, that when he heard a certain chord it would be a particular color. And so I love that you've kind of got this sense of these different colors and sparks and that represent music. How do you paint music? I don't know, but I feel like our artist here has had a pretty good stab at it. And it seems like an uncatchable moment. How do you paint beings that we've no idea what their physical form was, using song to create the world? What? And she's had a pretty amazing go at it here. I really, yeah, I applaud this expressionistic attempt at capturing that moment. I think it's pretty powerful.
Well, and looking at it slightly larger, it seems like the images in the background are a little bit more crisp than the ones in the foreground.
Mm-hmm.
At least in my eye.
I like Jeff Murray's Ulmo Rises as well. And we talked in one of the other brackets about the sort of Greek, I think it was when we saw Ulmo again. He kind of really does. He's one of the legendarium figures who appears more like a Greek god. And I think seems most closely linked to Poseidon or Neptune, to our understanding of gods in other mythologies. And this, the figure standing on the beach conversing with Ulmo very much feels like something out of Greek mythology to me. It could be on the beach at Troy when the Greeks are waiting and are encamped on the beaches, and yeah, there's a lot of Greek mythology feeling in this version to me.
Well, I'm excited to meet Ulmo and Rings of Power. I hope we do.
Yeah.
It's going to be terrifying.
Well, Jeff Murray, as you're kind of seeing in the Anakulis Ainulindale, he's also this representation of how he uses light and dark, bright and kind of the orange reddish hues along with the blue kinds of hues. This is very representative of his style of work. So there's a kind of magic that comes through. Jeff has been a long-term friend of folks here in the Atlanta area. He lived in Decatur. He died far too young, and just a wonderful person, as well as an artist that you can see in his work here.
All right, next up is Rescued from Wolves, obviously from The Hobbit, versus at Tom Bombadil's from Fellowship of the Ring. Two kind of different art styles going on here. Yeah. We got Michael Haig, 1984. So this would have been post Hobbit animated movie coming out.
Right. Michael Haig is an American illustrator. He mostly has illustrated children's fantasy books, and you can kind of see that kind of sensibility in this rendition. It's obviously not of the same kind of realistic rendition like we saw, say, in the Death of Boromir, or I guess the Horn of Boromir is the more realistic version of it. It's fanciful. It has the starry sky in the background that Kirsten wants on her wall.
I do love starry skies. But look at what else is in this picture. If you start down at the bottom, you can see the flames.
Yeah.
You can see that the trees are on fire, and then you can see the dwarves in the trees. There's one in a yellow hood, one in a blue hood. And then it looks like above the blue hooded one, that might be Bilbo's head that we're seeing in the tree. He looks a little bit like the Rankin Bass Bilbo with the red curly hair, if that is him. Or is that a red hood? No, maybe it's a red hood. It looks like it's a dwarf with a red hood. And you've got kind of lightning striking down through the tree. You know, there's a lot of really cool detail in this picture. If you were a child reading The Hobbit or having The Hobbit read to you and you came across this picture in the book, you would definitely want to gaze at it and take in all the details that it's capturing here. I like that Gandalf has his big blue hat here. I think the eagles are beautifully rendered. I mean, there's nothing sort of inaccurate or fanciful about them. The work of the wings, the perspective of the one that's just flying in. Yeah, there's a lot of spectacular work in this, and so much it pays closer inspection.
I like that it's not Tom Bombadil. I'm saying that just to antagonize. No, I did vote for it, but it's mostly, like I said earlier, not a fan of Tom Bombadil. Although I do like the Rings of Power, Tom Bombadil.
You doubly don't like this because it's Tom and Goldberry in one picture. I mean, this is everything that Josh doesn't like about. So this is. I'm trying to find what this seems like it's inspired by. I know I've seen faces and big deep set eyes like this before, but I can't place it. Definitely wasn't Maurice Sendak.
Oh no. The big eyes, is this like the Flemish artists?
Yeah, it definitely feels there's definitely that kind of Rembrandt. I mean, it's not particularly that art style, but the kind of fullness of the face, the wrinkles of the face are reminiscent to me of Rembrandt. I think it's perhaps slightly overpraising Inga Edelfelt, no disrespect. I'm not trying to say that this person's art is like Rembrandt's, but it certainly reminds me of the sort of if you like, merciless way that faces were painted by Rembrandt. That he doesn't give you a glow up in his paintings, and they're not hobbits.
Do we know what hobbits are supposed to be in this picture? Is it supposed to be Frodo and Sam?
Because I think so, because Tom has the ring.
Well, the reason I ask is because to me, the one hobbit in the foreground does have a Elijah Wood type look to his face. His structure looks a little bit. The other one reminds me of Pippin. To me, he looks like Billy Boyd.
Well, and of course, this is 1970. Yeah, those were.
So
I'm not sure Elijah Wood was born yet, but yeah.
And Tom Bombadil looks like that painter guy that would paint on television in the commercials in the 70s.
Bob Ross?
Yeah, that's who he looks like.
But I like this captures a great moment. I like, as we said, the sort of Rembrandt-esque unsparing, that every wrinkle and bulbous bit of the nose or whatever is shown. It's not necessarily done to be
under the chin.
The hand is very well rendered. I love that the ring is on his finger, but we can still see him. There's a little tiny glint of candlelight catching on the ring there, like doing a little ding moment. I love that Goldberry is, I think, coming in a door. I know, Jim, you said the other day you thought it was maybe a portrait, but I think she's coming through the door behind them, bringing them supper. You know, she's like, right, hobbits, time for some bowls of soup before your cozy bed. And she has her own magical glow. So you've got these two magical beings in their cozy home setting, and the hobbits are astonished that he is wearing the ring and he has not been rendered invisible.
What's interesting, I was going to go back to the rescued from the wolves for a moment. They're being rescued from the wolves, but you notice we don't see any wolves.
I think there might be one in the woods at the bottom. I was looking pretty close for that.
Yeah.
But again, both of these as story moments, if you as a child were reading and these pictures were part of the illustration, I mean, I could imagine as a kid, I could have spent ages poring over these illustrations and wondering about the characters, the moment captured, the magic in these two scenes. So I think they're both pretty spectacular and a hard choice, but the Starry Sky probably just seals the deal for me.
Question: If does Tom Bombadil know that the ring won't affect him? And second,
Yes.
follow up: how does he know that? And will we see that in Rings of Power?
I think two things. One, yes, he absolutely knows. We don't know how he knows. Tom is oldest, and who knows how he knows, but he absolutely knows it's not going to affect him. I don't think we're going to see Tom Bombadil at all again in Rings of Power.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I think he had his cameo. I know, I want more Bombadil, but I think they put him in season 2 for fun, and now they're done with him, is my opinion.
Gandalf's moving on, and he's not at the Withy Windle yet. So yeah.
And we're moving
The
on.
rumors are true. That if the rumors are true that they're jumping forward, yeah, I doubt we see him again.
Here's more Bombadil for your delight there, Josh. And another adorable Gollum. I love this Gollum so much.
Frog Gollum.
So weird, and
There
I
you are.
just love it.
Ribbit.
I voted for the frog
The
Gollum.
The not
That's
Tom.
The not Tom. Actually, this one I kid. This one actually had nothing to do with Tom Bombadil. Really, I just really got a kick out of Frogman Gollum because it was just so kind of like we were talking about earlier, or you guys were really talking about earlier about with the Gollum and how that one looked so just completely different than anything. This reminded me of the creature of from the Black Lagoon, and
Yeah.
I just got the biggest kick out of it. Looks like the creature from the Black Lagoon cast as Gollum talking to have you I know you guys have probably seen the commercials for the Tootsie Roll Pops, like how the characters are designed, the little cartoon characters are designed in that commercial. That's what Bilbo reminded me of. So you had the creature from the Black Lagoon, the Tootsie Roll Pop commercial guy, all talking about riddles in the dark. It was just to me it cracked me up in a funny way, and I thought it was really neat. So that's what I ended up going.
It's very Japanese. I mean, you watch any of the Miyazaki films, there's giant animals in all of his films, basically,
Yeah.
I think he's kind of adorable, and I like the way his arms are folded, and he's like, I don't know what he's saying, but Bilbo doesn't look very comfortable, which is appropriate. But Gollum looks like he's just having a chit
I'm talking
chat.
to a giant frog.
Gollum's like, so anyway, and then I told him. So I just love it. I think it's great. But I do also like, if we go back to our Tom Bombadil, this is very Hogarth. William Hogarth, who did a lot of pen and ink sketches, was particularly known for his series called The Rake's Progress. And this has that feel to it, and the lines in the pen and ink. I like that you can see the little hobbit legs sticking out from Old Man Willow there being chomped on, and Bombadil's got in there to save them, not a moment too soon.
Is there another being behind him? Or is that a statue? Because it just looks like...
it looks like, almost looks like a stone troll, doesn't it? Why they
it totally
right
does.
there.
I think let me bring up the Hogarth again. Very reminiscent of late 16th century wood block illustrations and pen and ink illustrations. You definitely...
The other illustrator it reminds me of is Gustave Doré, another person who does a lot of very fine pen and ink work. He did brilliant illustrations for The Rime of the Ancient Mariner, the Coleridge poem, and this is very similar to Gustave Doré's artwork.
Interesting, because I was going to say it had almost a wood block or an etching kind of a feel for me. So I was going Ulrich Dürer.
Oh yeah. Yep, I can see Dürer in this as well. And again, there's some great light and dark in here. I don't know where the light source is coming from that's on Tom's face, but I like that there's an illumination on his face.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
what the dudes are behind him. It does look a bit like stone trolls.
Unless
Or
he's decided to make it.
trees or
Because
clouds,
were
or
all 4 hobbits swallowed up, or was it only
No.
1 or 2 of them?
2 of them. One was pinched and one was trapped inside.
Yeah.
Okay, well then that would be the other hobbits behind them, and they just are drawn weirdly.
There's a Dura.
There's Albrecht Dürer again. Conveniently, he put 1512 on with his initials at the top. So this is right near I think right around the Renaissance, but in a very pen and ink woodblock type thing, very dark. Yeah, I can see it.
Which, but Alexander Korotic was born in 1960. So
Why?
obviously,
Why is Tom yelling at a tree like this?
He's singing to the tree.
He's saying, "Get back to sleep. You should not be waking. Eat earth, dig deep." Right? Because Old Man Willow has chomped down on a couple of hobbits. And Gustav, what am I talking about? Tom Bombadil. I'm distracted by Gustav Doré. Tom Bombadil is saying, "Go back to sleep. Stop eating hobbits." So he is freeing the hobbits from the grip of Old Man Willow.
2
That's why
amazing pieces.
They had Treebeard do that in the films, just to sort of show the anger of the forest that was that you get from Old Man Willow.
Right.
And because they cut out Tom Bombadil, we're like, well, hey, we've got a talking tree, so let's let him do his thing.
They give Bombadil's lines to Fangthorn, Freebeard.
The fun and fancy free reason to vote for Riddles in the Dark here. I will be interested to see if Tom Bombadil wins any of his matchups, and I wonder if the Rings of Power has increased Tom's profile, his stock, or not.
What I would like to do is to take the Gollum from the Riddles in the Dark and the Tom Bombadil and put them next to each other so they're having a conversation. So Gollum's going, nah, and Tom Bombadil's going, nah, and they're having a little chat together. I'd like to
That would be hilarious.
Love it.
I like that. Yeah.
All right, amazing pieces of art here. This is a tough matchup. You got the Eagles are coming from the end of the Return of the King versus the end of the Hobbit, Beorn at the Battle of the Five Armies.
Eagles again.
So and the Eagles are white here. Let's dive into these Eagles. I've never seen the Eagles as white. They're always brown Eagles.
Well, and I think you're also getting the light effect, and so Michael Wayland is clearly using that kind of an artistic interpretation of what's happening with those eagles. So I don't know.
Oh yeah, you might be right. There is a wizard. Gandalf is definitely on one of those eagles. You can see on the left.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And you're seeing the teeth of Mordor being crumbling away at the front of that scene.
The towers are falling.
Yep.
Oh, so is this pre or post Peter Jackson with the towers crumbling away?
1978.
This is pre.
Wow. I think Peter Jackson was inspired by this.
I actually have a Michael Whelan piece of art on my back. I have a dragon. I have a piece of art of Michael Whelan on my back.
Okay. It's a fantasy dragon?
Yeah, it's a dragon. I had them remove the wizard that was standing in front of them because I didn't like that wizard. So the artist free drew the belly of the dragon, and he's kind of like wings outspread, and it's not the lion rampant, but it's the dragon rampant.
Right.
Wings
so
out.
and that is Michael Whelan. He is a prolific artist in the fantasy and science fiction arena. He has not done that many Lord of the Rings inspired pieces. I was able to find a couple of them, but and obviously this one is a classic scene, which is why it's in our story moments one.
But I think, Justin, you make a good point that the Frodo and Sam on the rock with the lava pouring around them there, if you just reversed it, like mirror imaged it, it's very similar to the moment in the Peter Jackson film where they're on a rock with the lava pouring around them. And so I wonder if PJ had seen, or if some of the design team, I'm sure they looked at loads and loads of art, but I definitely see an echo of this in there. What is glowing between Frodo and Sam there? Is it just the light catching something?
It might be the vial of Galadriel.
I wondered if it's the vial of Galadriel, if it's meant to be, or what's...
It's around his neck, yep.
Yeah. That's kind of cool. And I like, again, you know, when you look
it's around Sam's neck. I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah. Which makes sense. Sam would have that, right? Because he had it when he fought Shelob.
Exactly. And you can see they've fashioned some kind of makeshift bandage because Frodo, of course, has lost a finger by this point.
Yep.
There's a lot of cool detail in there.
It's a very cool piece. I mean, it's very well done. It's a powerful moment.
The lava.
There's no way this isn't. This was definitely inspiration for Peter Jackson. I mean, just the fact that that they're stranded on a rock surrounded by. I mean, there's too many coincidences.
Justin, the book exists and it's described like this.
That's right.
This is how it's described in the book.
This was one of my toughest choices when I was picking between it and the other one because I love this moment.
There we go.
Yeah. So this is Daniel Govar's. And you gotta love Beorn. We did not get enough of.
We didn't. We did not.
Oh.
Yeah.
I would have loved to see Ron Perlman's Beorn in Guillermo del Toro's Hobbit. That would have been an incredible performance.
So fun.
So
I love the twist of Beorn's body here. Just looking at this, I love the way the right arm of Beorn has come all the way across, so his shoulder is right across. There's a real momentum to that slash of this mighty paw. You know, when you see bear paws, like grizzly bear paws in real life, they're so huge, and that paw is just swept across and the momentum's carrying on, twisting his body. There's really great motion captured in this.
And of course the goblin that's just flying through the air.
Yeah.
It reminds me of like modern comic. I mean, obviously it's 2021, but it reminds me of like modern comic book art. Like you'd see in an Avengers comic or something. And this is the one that I ended up voting for because I thought it was a very cool, modern, non-traditional take that we've seen on stuff from Middle Earth, because it looked like it would be from a series, on The Hobbit, done in a comic book style. I just think it's really cool for that particular reason.
Boots.
Bjorn looks like he looks like the Incredible Hulk. Like he's built like that. I mean, it's a really cool take on that moment and done with like a comic book art style. And I just found that kind of fascinating, to be honest with you, because I've never seen Lord of the Rings done in that way. So I thought that was really neat.
I like the boots on the flying goblin. They're so Three Musketeers with the fold down boots. It's just, that's the one thing that's like, I'm looking at this going, what the heck is up with those boots?
It's very Don Bluth. I mean, the lanky characters with the very knobby elbows and the boots and stuff like that. Very reminds me of a Don Bluth, kind of Mike Plug, kind of like that early '80s caricature style of a lanky bad guy.
It's true, and it's interesting because that is the sort of caricature thing, or the comic book art, as Josh was saying. The goblins around here very much are in that sort of caricature way, but Beorn, his bear's head and his paws and the eagles behind are very well accurately realistically rendered. So it's an interesting kind of contrast between these imagined goblins that look a little bit cartoony, but then this spectacular bear's head and these
Yeah.
two eagles that are beautifully rendered. So it's got some interesting contrast. I like the color palette of this. I like the way you've got the purples down at the bottom and then through the red and up to this yellowy orange.
Yeah, I wish we'd gotten way more Bjorn in the movies.
Well, two pieces of art separated by near 20 years, 78 to 2021. Well, mate, that's more than 20 years.
No, it's getting on for 50, I'm afraid.
You could put these next to each other on your wall, and they would blend well in the environment together. Just great pieces of art, both executed technically very proficient, very well. A little bit of cartoony stuff going on, but it works for both of them. And this is really a tough one. That's why we leave it up to you, the fans, to see who goes on to the next round. The next battle is Shelob is back again. Frodo and Shelob versus
not quite as cartoonish as the last time we saw Shelob.
Yeah, versus the Mumak of Harad. Why did you choose another spider?
Well, it was Xavier Collette, one of her cool pieces. She goes by Coleandra on the web sites, on the interwebs.
This is very much inspired by the movies, or does the book describe Shelob attacking Frodo from above like this?
Well, I'm not sure if it's from above. It's certainly from the side. Shelob had lots of secret exits from her lair. Frodo is proceeding without appropriate caution after he escapes and is running along, at which point he gets stung by Shelob. So this is that rendition. And that's not, it's clearly this is also the same approach that Jackson took in the movies.
Yeah, and Xavier, by the way, I think is a he.
It's a he, yeah.
But is definitely influenced by Peter Jackson here.
Right.
The version of Shelob is entirely his own, but you can definitely see an influence. The Sting looks very much like a Peter Jackson movie Sting. The file of Galadriel looks like a Peter Jackson movie file, and the perspective and the angle of the going through the sort of gully with the spider over the top. So it's obviously influenced by PJ. It's very well done. It's a particularly horrible. It's not a cute Muppet spider at all. It's a horrible.
I like the use of the light creating the green effect and creating that kind of eerie green glow that's going on. It does agree. I agree. It very much feels like a PJ thing, which again for me I really like, and that kind of always makes me kind of gravitate towards those type of pieces. The thing I like about it, the same as I kind of liked with the Bjorn thing, this feels like something you would see in like a graphic novel version of Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
I think it's a really neat take on it. I would like to see this again. The conversation just a minute ago. This is the kind of stuff that intrigues me because, as someone who grew up reading comic books and stuff, this would be, I think, a neat thing to have, like a graphic novel, Lord of the Rings, with like this style of art, or even like with the Bjorn style. With that one, I just think it would be really cool to have. On the bookshelf. I think it's really cool for that reason. I like the graphic novel feel of it.
Right.
And he's up against
Core Block.
Core Block. Now you've been wanting to talk about Core Block for a while, Jim.
I have been. Core Block's a Dutch artist, 1934 to 2021. He got interested early in Tolkien's Middle Earth and his trilogies, and he met Tolkien in 1961 and started showing him his versions of Middle Earth art. Tolkien admired those so much that he purchased one, the Battle of the Hornburg. And then from there, he created over 100 different paintings. His art was featured in the official Tolkien calendars of 2011, 2012. Honestly, I think there was a bimodal reception to it, and that may be what we'll get in the voting, because there are some including Tolkien, who looked at his art and said, "This is fantastic. I got to get me some of that on my wall." And others who said, "Why did you waste 2 years of my Tolkien calendar on this guy?" I'm remembering other artists that I liked so much more. And because I had a more of an inclination towards, the post Hildebrandt brothers or a more realistic version, or I liked Ted Nasmith, or I liked, other artists that we have seen and their renditions of Middle Earth. But as you can see, we have not seen another image like this one. It's almost very blocky, almost a decoupage sort of a feel to it. And yet it's also dynamic, and his figures are are very geometric, almost triangular in their renditions.
It's like weird. It's like a weird. You guys are obviously so much better with knowing like the different periods of art. It just feels like a weirdly fantastical, like almost, to be honest with you, like if I took one of my nephews and asked them to draw me an elephant, I think the best way I could put it. Like if I said, "Hey, draw me an elephant," I feel like and I don't mean that as a slight. I mean it's like a really fantastical, out there take on it. I didn't vote for it for that because it's just not my cup of tea. I think it's neat because it is wildly just out there. But maybe is that this person's style of art?
It's completely his style, and I know like it's hard to come up with terms to describe anyone's style, but this is all of his work is inspired by medieval tapestries, and it's kind of a minimalist tapestry style, even though it's not a tapestry. He's not weaving anything. These are all paintings and watercolors and illustrations, but the style of illustration comes from the medieval tapestry style, where you were kind of limited in the amount of detail you can put on a tapestry, and it was more about the colors and the shapes. But I've said this every time on every category. I said if Tolkien chose it, then I choose it. And
again, I think that's an interesting point. I would look at Korbloch's art, which I find charming and delightful and bizarre and a real childlike sort of joie de vivre in it. And I look at it and I think, I wonder what it was Tolkien liked about it, because we know that he was not shy about saying what he hated when he didn't like an artist's work. And I wonder what it was about the sort of simplicity and the childlike the clear colors, the shapes, I don't know if that Tolkien maybe felt that tapped into the imagination at a more instinctive level. I don't know. I would love to have been able to say to Tolkien, what was it that you loved about? And Jim, do we know which Korbloch he had on his wall?
It was called the Hornburg II. And so I assume it was, a Helm's Deep Battle of the Hornburg kind of a rendition. It would be interesting to search and see if we could find an image.
I'm looking at it right now.
I will never ever speak for Tolkien, but the fact that Tolkien was inspired to write all of his stories based on creating a medieval mythology for England, again, this his style, Korbloch's style, is directly inspired by medieval tapestry. And if Tolkien had an affinity for medieval art, medieval style, medieval tapestry, and here's a modern artist operating in that style and applying it to Tolkien's own story, I can see the attraction Tolkien would have to be like, wow, you've taken my story and applied my favorite style of artwork toward it. I can see possibly that would be a line of affinity for it, but I don't know. I'm making it up.
But it's also interesting. I was just looking up a Hornburg one online. I don't know if it's the one that Tolkien had, but there is, and there's something in there that's reminiscent of Lowry, the British painter Lowry, who painted in a very sort of primitive folk art style. And his art, there was a song, I don't know if it was a hit in the States, but there was a song in the late 60s or early 70s. He painted matchstick men and matchstick cats and dogs, and that was about Lowry. And his rendering of people was very much kind of matchstick, childlike, simple folk art, and people loved it. It kind of captured something primitive and instinctive within them. And I think that Core Block's minimalist style does that. It kind of gets to a truth in a way that photographic realism doesn't always get to a truth.
Right.
All right. Well, we got two.
It's more impressionistic. Justin, I was going to say, you can get a book of a collection of Core Block's works, and the title of that book, to your earlier point, is A Tolkien Tapestry. And so that tapestry idea is very much carried through with
See,
that theme.
I went to art school for something. Anyway, you guys get to choose. I always side with Tolkien. If Tolkien expressed love and interest in something, I'm going to go with that. So I'm going for the Mumak of Harad, even if you don't understand it. Our second to last matchup is going to be...
I just want to say one thing about the Mumak. He looks a bit like he's wearing a Mandalorian helmet. Just throwing it out there. Mandalorian helmet going on in there.
I'm never gonna not unsee that now.
That's right.
Yep, that's my gift to you.
Now, I don't like the one on the right, and I don't know what the one on the left is. So please, someone enlighten me with what's going on.
Karkaroth, the one on the left, is by an artist named Justin Gerard. He's a young artist. He has done a lot of Silmarillion kinds of things. He's also done a lot of other fantasy sorts of work. He's married to Annie, who also does kind of fairy and fantasy kind of things. So it's a couple art powerhouse. Justin, as I said, is mostly done Silmarillion things. He's also done a few Hobbit things. He's got a great Smaug piece. This scene, Karkaroth is the name of that wolf, that huge creature. He is the most dangerous, fearsome wolf ever created by Morgoth. He's Huon, the hound of one of the Valar, Huon's bane. They have a tremendous fight eventually. This scene is after the one that we saw in the earlier region between Morgoth and Luthien, where Morgoth has gone to sleep. Beren has cut a Silmaril away out of Morgoth's crown, but he got greedy and he tried to cut a second one away, and his blade broke and woke Morgoth up, and now he and Luthien are trying to escape, and he's holding a Silmaril in his left hand in front of the confrontation with this giant wolf who's there to stop them. And in an instant, you would learn why Beren was then named Beren One-Handed, because he's going to lose that hand and the Silmaril. His
gonna be a big old chomp.
That's right. But his message to Luthien's dad, Thingol, was, "No, I have the Silmaril in my hand. It's just not happened to be attached to my body."
Yeah, I just don't have my hand, but the Silmaril's still in my hand. Can we just zoom in on Beren and Luthien there? I wanna have a close look at Luthien. She looks like she's kind of, that's
very elf like sprite, like a wood sprite.
It has a kind of manga look about it there, doesn't it? That feels almost like an anime character to me, or a manga character.
Or at least Asian in Asian more than
what's interesting
anything
about that, Kirsten, is that is very much the style that Justin Gerard's wife paints a lot of her fairyish figures. So this may even be a nod of his own romantic relationship with his own wife in the Beren
maybe
story.
he is Maybe he's painted a little bit of himself into Beren and a little bit of his wife into.
I mean, that's how I would paint myself. That's for sure.
First time somebody did that.
Yeah.
That's cool though. I like that. I like
It
that.
is.
And I can't tell if she's shying away from Karkaroth or if it's almost the light of the Silmaril that's too bright to be able
Yeah.
to look.
I think it's the light. I love the bas relief on the walls behind
Yes.
Karkaroth. That's amazing.
They're terrifying.
Hagrid's gonna be mad.
That's very Justin Gerard. He does a lot of very interesting work, not just on the figures, but also on the backgrounds of the
They
pieces.
look like something out of a Del Toro movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would vote for this. There's a lot going on and incredible. But Clifford seemed to love this more than anything else.
Well, Daryl Sweet, yeah, he's familiar with him. Yeah.
Why? Yeah, what's going on? Wait, white sapling. Is this the white tree?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
This is the sapling to replace the one that died.
Unlike the movie, which sort of magically blooms again, it's dead. It's dead and gone. And Aragorn, he has two big agendas after the destruction of the ring. He needs to find this white sapling, and then he can get married to Arwen, and then he can be the king. And it goes on from there. But he needs to find this tree. And so there is a section we've never seen on film where Gandalf helps him. And the amazing thing about this is this tree is obviously at least 2 or 3 years old, which predates the entire Lord of the Rings story. There is a kind of providence that's captured in this image where this tree has been growing up there in the mountains above Minas Tirith for years. And now Aragorn gets to discover.
It's been awaiting the return of the king.
Right.
Right. And I like this painting for a couple of reasons, and I dislike it for a couple of reasons. I like it because it captures a moment that we didn't see in the film, that we don't often see rendered in art, but are very important as a story moment that this bracket is. Not that you have to vote that way based on the story moment, but this is a vital story moment. I think it's an extremely skilled painting. I love the vista in the background of the mountains and all of that. I think it's spectacular. The shadows on the snow. I do not like what Aragorn is wearing. It's very late 70s, early 80s fantasy. And that kind of trips me up, that I'm like, it's a cool moment. I like seeing it. It's incredibly well rendered. But what the hell is he wearing?
It feels like a sci-fi fantasy novel look that he has
going on. Well, and there's those 80s,
exactly. All the 80s sci-fi fantasy films, they all look like this.
Yeah.
Well, or the books do. So Daryl Sweet is particularly well known, not only for his Lord of the Rings illustrations, and they're going to show up in calendars and book covers like this one does, but he was the guy that did almost all of the Wheel of Time covers. He was the guy that did nearly all of the Piers Anthony Xanth covers. Wow. He did Stephen Donaldson's Chronicles of Thomas Covenant the Unbeliever covers. Wow. And so he is a prolific cover artist. Yeah.
Is that supposed to be a dragon on his head? Or is that what is that?
It's a leaf. It's a wing. It's a crown of Gondor.
Yeah, it's the crown of Gondor, the winged crown.
Okay, it's just at a weird angle.
It looks like a bird or something.
Yeah, it does.
Well, it is wings.
There you are.
And
that leads to our final matchup.
Yep.
Final matchup.
The Death of Smaug, a very woodblock style black and white illustration versus Ted Naismith's The Kinslaying of Albuquerque.
This might be
Albuquerque.
The hardest choice for me. They're all hard, but this might be the hardest. This Death of Smaug, if we have a look at that, I love Bela Linsky's style. Again, they're very much children's book illustrations. Look at the faces of the people below. Look at Bard's face and the cheering people of Lake Town, and I love this heraldic Smaug. Talking of tattoos, man, I would like to get this Smaug tattooed. He looks like a lion rampant, you know. I just think it's such a fun, cool, playful, delightful illustration.
Yeah, he
I
looks surprised.
I like the look on Smaug's face. That's why, yeah, I was gonna say that's why I like Smaug. That's why I voted for this one. I like Smaug's face. He's like, I can't believe he actually shot me. I mean, that's the look on his face.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up. So it's like, so that to me, it just, I don't know. It feels kind of silly, and I mean that in the most positive, kind way possible. It's a silly painting, and the Smaug face just was the cherry on top for me, because he's just, like I said, he's just like, I can't believe he actually shot me, and so I went with it for that reason.
You know, I love this art style, and I would love even to see this animated. You know, you were just talking about the the face on Smaug, but I'm thinking about in the last Harry Potter movies, where they did that whole animated sequence about the three objects, and I'm like, I wonder if, like, you know, Peter Jackson, or even Rings of Power, if they could, like, tell short stories about the history of something, but in an animated style like this. They started to do that with that whole Mithril thing, where it was kind of like an illustrative type thing, and then the lightning bolt with the character and the Balrog. I'm like, they should have leaned more into this art style, which would have been just totally illustrative, because I think this would have been more fun to see more animated versions of this, because as we've seen in this whole contest, there's a ton of great kind of woodblock line art style illustration that feels very Tolkienian.
And this one, again, since The Hobbit is a child's book, it would make sense to make it, instead of that other Smaug that we saw where he's flying right into your face and he just looks like he's going to rip you apart. This one is the one that you would put into a children's book. Yeah.
Versus one of the greatest pieces of art ever made.
So stunning. And I mean, Ted Naismith's work is amazing. And this is so beautiful. It's got the starry night sky, which I love. I love the lamplight on it. I love the perspective. You know, that vanishing point on the horizon. It's so beautiful. And then when you look close, it's also horrifying.
Right. This is a peaceful picture of murders.
Such bloodshed and horror and murder and kinslaying against such a beautiful setting. It really brings home the utter tragedy of it, that the stunning beauty of the elves, and they're just slaughtering each other. It's
such a well-known piece. I mean, I think everybody is probably, that's a fan of Tolkien, has probably seen this painting. It's absolutely stunning and beautiful, and I would honestly fully expect this one to win because of how beautiful it is, and how the dichotomy of the peacefulness that is the water and the sky and the elven boats, and the beauty that is the elven structures, but then it's mixed with the absolute ravaging of the elven way of life by having the kinslaying going on. I think it's just an absolutely fantastic painting.
Look at
have you noticed with the boats how the swan heads are not on all of them, and they're not all in the same shape? It's like every one of them is different and unique. It's amazing.
And look at how the lights hanging on the prows of the boats are reflected in the water. I mean, the water is so brilliantly rendered here. It's just spectacular.
So here's a little bit of a backstory. Ted Naismith sent Tolkien pictures of his art in 1972, the year before Tolkien died. And Tolkien actually responded back to him. And he said that he appreciated it, but he also said that his Bilbo Baggins seemed a little too childlike. And Nasmith was a teenager at the time. And what he's recounted was that that was an encouragement to pursue a more realistic orientation, but an artistic interpretation of it. So when you look at his work, just like we're saying here, and how every one of these swan boats is a swan boat, and yet in the elven style, each one of them is its own artistic expression of that culture. That would be very much in keeping with what Ted Nasmith is evolving as an artist of Tolkien, and he's become a titan. You know, he's on like 11 different calendars. He's got whole books that are published in memorial editions or anniversary editions with his illustrations of them. He was almost it was going to be a triumvirate of Alan Lee and John Howe and Ted Nasmith working on the Jackson movies, but he had other things that would not allow him to be part of that whole scene. But he was going to be invited to it. He was invited, but had to turn it down. So that's the kind of stature that Nasmith has. And so isn't he one of the readers in the upcoming Tolkien
Yeah,
reading?
he is tomorrow. He is. And I mentioned at the beginning of the stream today that Donato Giancola shared this March Madness on his socials. Well, Ted has also been in touch to say that he is delighted that his kinslaying of Aquilonde is in our March Madness this year. So he's another person who is getting a kick out of our wandering around an epic gallery of Tolkien art. And this, I wouldn't be surprised if this was a contender to go all the way in the contest. As charming as I find the Smaug, I think this could be one to go all the way to the championship.
Right. We shall see.
We shall see.
I'm going to have to peace out. I'm going to love you and leave you. I'm sure you're wrapping it up soon anyway, but I have a hard out, so I've got to run. Thanks. See you folks soon. More fun for round 2.
Thank you, Kirsten, for helping put this together and all the research. And thank you, everybody, for watching today. This is, again, we've put so many hours into talking about this artwork, all inspired by Tolkien. And again, March Madness is all about you guys voting at home. The link is in the description. You have until midnight tonight, Eastern. So we still got, what?
California.
5 hours? Something like that, to
4 hours,
get 4 hours to get your votes in for the first round, and then we'll tally them up, and hopefully tomorrow we'll open up round 2. And now that you've been informed with all the different pieces of art, we hope we've provided some historical context about the artists and the style that they're working in and the values of that artwork, because I know not everybody gets exposed to many types of art and don't know what to look for to appreciate it. And that was one of the purposes of these conversations this week, was to introduce you to new art styles and new artists. And I appreciate everybody in the chat room saying, oh my God, I'm so happy that you introduced me to this artist and I'm following her on Instagram. That's the goal. So broaden your mind.
Justin, can I ask a favor of all of you? Can we go back to Landscapes, the 5th game in Landscapes, the one that's got the John Howe barrel out of bounds and the Underhill from the Greek
Alexis?
Yeah. I would just like to make one comment on this one, partly because I did go find that Donato's post on Facebook, and somebody had commented in there's like going, but where's John Howe? And so I wanted to make sure we pointed it out, and then also make a comment about the Underhill.
I just love that Underhill painting.
I
really do.
I hope it goes. I love John Howe, but
to be honest, that's one of those that I might have to see if I can find. I mean, I would like to have a copy of that. It's that beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, I really honestly like that a lot.
Well, and what I love, I mean, the John Howe one is spectacular, particularly with the fact that you can see a small little archer, an elephant archer up in the trees.
Yeah.
But when I was looking at this Underhill, what got me was, okay, first off, you've got the, again, night sky, but instead of it being above the tree is sort of behind the tree, which I love. But when I'm looking at this tree and the fact that you've got the tree and then you've got Bag End underneath of it, this reminds me of Yggdrasil from the Norse mythology, the tree of life. And I'm just looking at that thinking of the Hobbit hole is the earth, the ground, the trunk of the tree is the world around you. And then of course the tree itself, the birds and the gods.
Yeah. I
just see Yggdrasil in this all the way. But yeah, you're right. That it's just a beautiful picture.
It's just that, yeah. It's fantastic.
Well, to your point, Josh, and we put that. You'll see. You saw it there on the screen. You'll see it when you go to the voting pages where we have it. We have given you a link to that artist's site, and for Spiro Galekis, that we had that. So even if it doesn't move on, you have a chance to both enjoy that particular piece and see other things that artist has done. So we hope that's a good resource for you.
Yeah. Well, that's the March Madness bracket. 64 pieces of art from 64 different Tolkien artists. And tonight at midnight, there will only be 32 remaining in the March Madness brackets. And we're going to keep on voting for the next couple weeks. So get your votes in. The link is in the description. Get your votes in. Appreciate all the different artworks and vote for your heart and vote for your eyes and vote for whatever reason you want, because all of the art is wonderful. I mean, there were some surprises here. We never thought that we would be reviewing Maurice Sendak's Lord of the Rings artwork or Frank Frazetta's Lord of the Rings artwork or anything like that. So this has been really fun. Thank you, Jim, for doing a lot of the legwork and hard work putting this together. And Kathy and Josh, it's almost like you guys know how to teach and talk to people about educational things.
They pay me for that sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
And of course, we will incorporate a little bit of like whatever is the current standings during our Friday and Saturday at WonderCon. We'll put it up because we want to make sure that all the people who come to our to their panels actually know that this is happening and have time to go in and see everything.
Yeah. So voting continues tonight for the next 4 hours on the first round. Programming note. Join us Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific, where we're gonna be joined by one of the artists that are in the competition, Jerry Vanderstelt. You can see him in the artwork behind Josh's head right there. So we're gonna talk to him about the artwork and maybe what other artists that he was inspired by. Maybe he made some selections that he can talk through. That'll be Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And then following that, we're going to be at WonderCon Anaheim. Tickets are still available. We have a panel on Friday evening, and we have a panel on Saturday morning. So looking forward to seeing all of you.
It's 2 p.m. on Saturday.
And so we'll be seeing you all in Anaheim. And then next week, we're going to have some special live streams, and we'll publish that schedule. We're thinking about next Sunday and next Tuesday. And we got some awesome stuff. Also, programming note, I don't know if I'm going to get to it on Tuesday, but Warner Brothers and New Line Cinema have given us 20 copies of War of the Rohirrim on 4K and Blu-ray. And we're going to find a way to
bring a couple to WonderCon.
We're not giving them at WonderCon. They're online only. And we are going to give it to people who are participating in our Middle-earth March Madness bracket. So thank you for watching. And stay tuned to all of our live streams because we got prizes, we got special guests, and we got conventions. And we're just getting started. Thank you, Jim. Thank you, Kathy. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Kirsten, and everybody else at theonering.net. We'll catch you on Tuesday. Signing off for now.